Feldenkrais Awareness Summit. Here we are on day 6 with this theme of essential Feldenkrais. Before we get into that theme, I actually want to tell you about something exciting that's coming up. We have added a bonus day for you. We've been reading your emails. We know a couple of areas that have been a little bit of a gap for us, and we're going to see if we can try to fill those. So you'll get an email tomorrow about this, but the bonus day, as you know, the summit ends on the 10th. You'll have a rest day on the 11th, or you can be rewatching replays. On the 12th, we will have a bonus day. And I'll tell you at the end of this what's going to be in that bonus day, but I just want to get you a little bit excited about what's coming up. So, and particularly, it's a day for everybody. The morning is for everyone. The afternoon is for clinicians and rehab professionals. So for those of you who in that field that have been going, hey, I want a little something more for my field, we've got you covered. So I'm very glad here to have with me today 2 wonderful people to help us flesh out this idea of essential Feldenkrais. I'd like to introduce you first to Arlene Zones. Arlene, just wave for us there so we all know for sure who we're looking at. Arlene has a master's in theater arts. She's been involved in the Feldenkrais method since 1977. She graduated in Dr. Moshe Feldenkrais's last training out of Amherst. She is one of the most experienced trainers in the US and has taught in over 100 trainings worldwide. She has a specialty in voice, but she also does a wide range of practice besides her training in physical and neurological difficulties in infants, children, and adults. Hi, Arlene.
Hi, Cynthia.
Yeah, great. And then we also have with us here Christina Peterson coming to us. You live in Germany, right, Christina?
Yes, I live in Germany.
Yes, so she's up late at night just for us. And she came to the Feldenkrais method by way of her musical studies. She went on to train to become a practitioner and eventually an assistant trainer. She speaks 3 languages, making her pretty versatile to be here with us on this group, but also to host her podcast called Conmoto, which she hosts in several different languages, and is really a Feldenkrais podcast, by the way, for those of you who are looking for something along those lines. She's also trained as a senior trainer in sounder sleep and has a specialty in sleep-related issues. Hi, Christina.
Hi.
Hi. So I thought maybe we could get started a little bit, Arlene. I mean, I know we don't want to spend a bunch of time on this, but I'd like to just hear, because we don't have that many people who studied with Dr. Feldenkrais to talk to us. So could you share anything about that experience with him or some memory? Because this is his birthday. And I know.
Not to say thank you for inviting me on Moshe's birthday. I owe him everything. Well, I was in the theater and that was in the 70s. And I kept hearing from theater people about this little book with Leonardo da Vinci's picture on the front, called Awareness Through Movement. And the theater people were starting to use some of those lessons in the book for warm-ups and explorations. And so as they say, as we tell people, you have to hear about Feldenkrais 3 times before you sign up. And that happened to me. So I kept bumping into it. I was living in New Mexico, and then I moved to San Francisco, and and then I decided, actually, I came to do a master's in Feldenkrais and Alexander for actor training, Feldenkrais and Alexander method for actor training. And I was teaching movement for actors. And then Moshe came in 1977 to Dominican College, and he gave a 4-day workshop. And at the time, I was actually doing some Alexander work and thinking about training in it. And then I went and met Moshe and spent 4 days with him. And he completely captivated me in every possible way. He was just, it didn't matter what he was talking about, and it didn't matter if he told you a story that you didn't understand. You were still completely enthralled just to go along for a ride with whatever it was he was saying. And it all felt incredibly important. And then on about day 3 of the workshop, and I'd already studied a lot of different movement systems for theater. And then about day 3, we were doing some movement on the stomach, look over the shoulder, and all of a sudden I was kind of flying through the air, as many people have experienced, weightless. I just flew up, got up, and then later I was flying through the air doing some other movement. And I was like, this is incredible. I've never felt anything like this in my life. So it was just, that was it. And then I waited 3 years for the Amherst training to start. But I still remember the stories. I mean, it's, I remember it all. So he was, and the other thing, I guess the last thing that's so important to say is that I had my own, litany of woes, injuries, accidents, and had been getting advice from people. And so when I went to that workshop, I said, as many people have said, okay, this man actually really knows. He really understands. And he could help me understand for myself, right? Instead of having to go seek all this advice. So
yeah,
that
beautiful. Thank you so much for sharing that. So in this essential Feldenkrais track, what we've had so far, if you've had a chance to listen to the interviews, what we've had so far is Diana Razumny talking about awareness through movement. We had David Zimak-Burson talking about functional integration. That's the private work. So awareness through movement is the group class work or the verbally led work. And then we had Irene Line talking about her desire for the method to become known more as a learning theory. And I would like to actually back up a little bit and talk a little bit about what your experience has been so far in the summit in the awareness through movement lessons. So before COVID-19, everybody was still on the 15 minutes is a long time for a lesson program. If I'd have known that we were going to have more people at home during that time, I would have had a set of lessons, particularly Marlena's, recorded at 30 minutes. But I didn't know that, and they were all done when COVID-19 happened. And it's a little bit gutsy to call anything that's 15 minutes long an awareness through movement lesson, because it only gives you a very tiny taste of what the process is really like. But in Teruo's Awamoto's lessons, we get a sense of the pacing in an awareness through movement lesson and the call to attention and some variety and some nice, very, I say, simple developmental lessons. And then in Marlena's lessons, and I'm just not going to say her last name because I'm going to mess it up. So I'm so bad with names. That could be a whole course for me, is to do better with names. In Marlena's session, what we get a feel for, they're more advanced, and we get a feel for the playfulness and also some of the complexity of a lesson structure. Both of these are giving you just little bits, a taste of aspects that are in Feldenkrais awareness through movement lessons. We're going to talk a little bit more now about what goes into an awareness through movement lesson. We've heard you say you want to understand the theory. We've heard quite a few questions about that. You want to understand more about some of the components of it. And so, Arlene, I'd like you to get us started with sort of like, what is it we're inviting people into, at least as a beginning place in awareness through movement?
Well, there's principles of the method, and then there's the things you actually do in a given method. And one of the big ideas that I absolutely love is the idea that, so you start, there's a scan, which we'll talk about more in a minute, and then you're asked to do, you could start with something very simple, like move your shoulder, and then you're asked to pay attention to something else. You're asked a series of questions, other movements are brought in. And by the end of the lesson, you're doing a larger, more complex movement, and your entire self is involved. And one of the things, and Moshe used to say when we, in Amherst, I mean, he must have said it 300 times in month number 1, unless you use your entire self, the movement will never be easy, elegant, and aesthetically pleasing. Now, how let's say more about how this comes about. So, because we're not trained that way, we're trained to pay attention, to fixate on the part we think doesn't work well, or what's wrong with us, or what we want to change. And so one of the strategies or the means is to go from the habit of what you would call an exclusive attention, which means I don't, this shoulder is injured and I want to change it. And then all my attention goes into the problem. But we're coming away from an exclusive attention, we're going toward an inclusive attention. And the inclusive attention is my entire self. And sometimes it includes my skeleton, it includes the space inside, it includes my breathing, it includes my thoughts. It turns out that my entire self is a very big, rich, as is yours, universe, right? It's so interesting how many things we never included. So when you spread the attention like this, and you do it in the beginning through a scan, you're asked to pay attention to one part and then another and then another. And already while you're having a look around with you're lying there, but your eyes are looking for the places. So already the muscle tonus is shifting. You're starting to collect the parts. Because the muscle tone is shifting, the breathing is getting a little bit easier. And you should stop me when you need to, Cynthia, because it's a bit long, but that's how I think about it. So then you start a lesson, if you're doing a full lesson, which is the kind of lessons I teach. So you're already starting the lesson. Your mind has been quieted down through the work of the attention in this special way. And some of the noise has gone away from the fixations, the daily preoccupations. And you begin the lesson. And the first order of business is you're told less effort, reduce the effort, right? And so there's less effort, there's paying attention to more parts, and the breathing has to be free. And
So I would think really, actually, though, when you're even talking about inclusive attention, you're already talking about less effort. It takes a lot of effort to focus exclusively and obsess about something. I mean, what is that?
I know, but when you come away from these fixations in our brain, and Moshe used to have this expression, you never hear it, like, quieting down the noise, leveling the cortex. So we're giving your mind a job, attend to this, attend to that. And so by following the instructions and attending to things that are non-habitual for you, that you don't notice, you're moving away from that other noisy kind of organization. So you are ready for less effort, a little bit less effort, hopefully, when you begin. Yeah.
So what do you see happens for people, Christina, once they've reached that place where things are starting to quiet down, and what for you comes next in a lesson?
So that's a nice question, but maybe I want to refer a little bit more to what Alan said, that just this afternoon I was allowed to go again to teach piano, and I went to a family and they have a new puppy. He is only 9 weeks old and he's so cute, and actually she. And I saw that she tried to manage to sit and to raise only one foot and one leg. And what I saw with this dog was that she was so good in managing the 4 feet and the head and everything, but her the back wasn't so. It looked like not her her legs, the legs behind.
Her legs didn't look like they belonged to her.
Yes, then when she was going on the slippy surface, the foots were very good, but the last were like, don't know where to go. And then I sat there, and then my Feldenkrais teacher brain starts to come out, and I looked at her and I thought, what is going on? And also I had the possibility to cuddle around back to the ears, and everyone who ever touched a dog knows the dog like this and everything. And also I saw that the whole family touched the dog. Here, Freda is her name, only more head, ears, and this. And so it was so normal that she is like not being aware of her back part. So if she would grow up with all her family and they cuddle around and she is with all her sisters and brothers, she would have the feeling of her whole, but with humans. And so what I did was I clapped, I pressed, but very softly. And then she was able to sit more secure and to walk. And then the women say to me, and now I have you to pay also for the Feldenkrais lesson you gave to my dog. And I said, no, it's okay. It was such a pleasure to touch this little dog. But then it sprung to my mind that this is so basic, when we are the whole day at the computer, we are in front, we are with our hands, we are concentrating there. And yes, and then we lose more the whole feeling and to be in action with everything. It's not only that we are trained, or it's the how we raised, but it's also how we use ourselves, bringing up some special inner feeling.
Mm-hmm. So I heard you say a couple things that I'd like to maybe pull out a little bit more clearly. I mean, one of them is that you're really starting to flesh out this idea of self-image and
Yes.
how we experience ourselves, how we know ourselves, and if we get a lot of attention or we use ourselves in a very focused way. So this puppy was getting a lot of attention, is your theory, towards the head. And I think all animals are tend to be, because of all the teleceptors. This is certainly one of both Feldenkrais's and Alexander's theories, is that the teleceptors of the head drive a whole lot of our behavior, right? And we know that the brain is highly connected to all of these. So you basically started to do a functional integration lesson with this puppy, right? And in your hands, you began to draw its attention away from this exclusive area to, this kind of neglected area. And so there's a kind of, I don't know, it's not exactly what Arlen was talking about in inclusive attention, but certainly the intention, the ability to attend got broadened or lengthened or widened or deepened for the puppy, which is lovely. And you're also then saying, look, if we stay focused, like me on this camera, all of us zooming all the day long, me doing all these computer things all day long, that also my self-image starts to shift. So what do we know about this idea of self-image? Either one of you.
This is such a fantastic idea, and it was referred to in the functional integration lesson this morning by David, where he said, if I have an injury, for example, as a child, let's say I break my clavicle, and then within hours, in Ramachandran, he was referring to his research, I have a sensory motor cortex, this is represented, and it starts to kind of disappear. Literally, my clavicle, this connection, and other things take its place. And then I grow up, and 20 years later, I have neck pain, and I think it's my neck. And it turns out it's something that happened here, where my arm, my shoulder, my functioning of the movement here, my bone healed, but my self-image was never, the parts were never brought back into relationship with all the other parts. And you can manipulate this, you can rub the muscles, you can do whatever you want. Neurologically, it makes no difference whatsoever. So in order to have this restored as part of myself, I have to move the arm and connect it to every other part of myself.
So there's this element of motion, that motion and how it relates to the self is what changes our self, what we call the self-image, or the image we have of how we work.
The sensation of the whole, again, in an action, in a movement, all the parts relating, or that it comes from my spine, it comes from my foot, it comes from my, so it's, and this was part of Moshe's genius, again, was ways that he could get us to feel these really so many interesting interconnections that exist.
Yeah, and for those people who are listening that have a clinical or rehab background, I think this little area that we're talking about is something that the Feldenkrais method really excels at, and could be captured more in the therapeutical or clinical context. Yeah, so Christina, you have this puppy, you give it a different sense of itself, of it, how everything connects, and then it's sitting and it's walking, you see right away changes, and other people even see it changes. And we know that the puppy experienced a sensation of change. Yeah.
Yes, even this. And yeah, what I think is also, Alan inspired me to think about that normally we do things like dancing, or we train something when we are grown up. I have to think just a moment, but it was something Alan said that brought me to the idea. What I think sometimes is the misunderstanding with the Feldenkrais, so that we are only on the floor and that we are only rolling to one side and to the other side and doing all this little stuff. And does this works? And because when I maybe go to dance class, or like the women, I saw this talk with the pool dance. She said something, oh, when I started to do this, I felt that I'm upright, walking was easier. So the pool dancing helped her to walk easier. And one thing, what I think, what is so essential in what Moshe Feldenkrais found out, or saw, maybe not found out, what he saw is that when we go back to the floor and to roll and to do these things, it will also make our walking better. Mm-hmm. And also the pool dance, as she said, so that it is like a lift from down to up, but it also can work from up to down.
Right, absolutely. And so we see in many different kinds of works that people can improve their gait by doing it. It's certainly not just exclusive to the Feldenkrais method, but, and also what you described.
Can I spring just in? The thing is, when you work more at the base, this will help this level and the upper level.
Well, right. we're learning to, you know, like in our training, within like half of a year, we were learning to move like a martial artist who spent 10 years to get to that kind of organization. So there's also the organization of the muscles. That, I mean, there's a lot we haven't touched on. The physics, the, you know, self-image is a neurological part. I think we could talk about that for 3 days. But there's also the, you know, the muscular organization, the head and the pelvis, bringing the power into the pelvis, mobilizing that for easy action, taking the parasitic effort out of the limbs, right? Or as Alexander, you know, found out, not getting up out of a chair with your neck muscles, which really weren't designed for that. So I don't know where, you know, it's a lot.
Yeah. So let me just say, for people who are tuning in or have been here, you can start putting your questions in the Q&A section. That's where I will be monitoring, and I'll start addressing questions here before too long. So you can start stacking them up, and I'll try to get through as many of them as I can. So I think this is interesting. Christina's bringing up basically a developmental approach. Now, developmental approaches are taught in physical therapy and in occupational therapy, but I do think we have a very different style of how we approach the developmental sequence than typically is done. And maybe it is mostly about this lowering effort, inclusive intention, and taking a lot of time. We're not in any hurry. We don't have to be in hurry. We're not on a really strict time schedule with treatment. Is there anything else that strikes you, Arlene, about that whole developmental piece?
Well, I probably have, you said I have a thing with voice. That was a little side project, but I work a lot with babies and children. But early on, I also worked with a lot of adults. Like I had a case where the woman she was 23 and she'd already had like 8 accidents. She was always having accidents. And they sent her to the psychologist thinking, okay. But when I was working with her, I found out she'd never done the contralateral crawling, which is one way that you establish easy balance in yourself, is through arm opposite leg. And she'd skipped that. So she had this kind of different way where her ankles would roll in and she would fall easily, and it affected certain things in her breathing. And so, I mean, there's many really interesting stories with people where you uncover their history, their own special, unique history. And in that you find some part that wasn't really clear. I had a little girl who, she was born with one eye close to the nose. She had balance problems, and I was rolling her on my table. And when I took her to the right, she grabbed the table as if she was going to fall. And it turned out she really felt she was falling off a cliff. And it turned out, because she'd never done this movement of taking the right eye to the right side, that she hadn't constructed space around herself on the right. So all the first year and a half of life, we're establishing our world, our sense of three-dimensionality, our sense of agency. And you find out fascinating things about people's difficulties. And I think that's why Moshe started the Amherst training, really investigating this developmental piece, which he didn't do in the other groups.
But I see also a really big similarity between the building blocks of martial arts and the developmental piece.
It is.
I mean, I'm not sure they're different.
Not much different. I agree. That's interesting that you would say that. That's what Dennis Leary said to me when I said, "Oh, I love these developmental movements," and he just went, "No, it's martial arts." He was a martial arts.
Developmental movements, whatever we call it. Well, I mean, this use of the pelvis is a big piece of the Feldenkrais method, and possibly is one of the things that makes us a little bit different than the Alexander technique. And we'll hear more about that from David Hall later in this series. But yeah, Christina, do you want to jump in on that, or either one of you want to jump in and say a little more about that before I start?
Yes, I have another example which will go together with the eyesight. So I had a client, this is more psychological thing. So she was sitting upright, but like a step to the side. So maybe I have to stand up to show that there was a line and then a line down. So this was like a step to the other side. Even when she lie on the table, I could see that she is like a step. And she was so anxious all the day, and she had such big problems with her balance. And how to say to her, you're not in your midline, because she thought she is in her midline. And we had some lessons together, and then I had the idea that to put her beside a wall. So when she sat, I don't know how can I do this. No, it's sometimes so so good that when you're like this, she sat at the wall like this and she could lean on it. It's a little bit, maybe I can bring it more like this. Yes. So, but when she turned around, yes, here she was away. And she was, what am I doing? I sit in my middle and my shoulder isn't touching. And I said only, oh, or maybe, look, what have you to do to only reach to the wall? And she was like, but then I'm not in the middle. But she looked down and then it was like a key lesson for her. She went also to her psychotherapy. She had there a good talk. So it wasn't not only me working with her, also there was someone else. And then this was the key for her to find out something else. And it was the step to go out of her actual state of not being able to work or to go out without some problems. So the eyesight was also that when she looked up, when she was like in her step, she looked up, but here she was like confused. When I brought her by holding her head more about her pelvis in the line, then she was confused. Here she could look up. Maybe you understood everything what I say.
Well, what you showed is in order to do that, every part of her had to do something different in relation to every other part. You couldn't just take her head and say, look, that's the middle, right? Everything had to.
No, I didn't say this. I only played with this.
Right.
And I construct an environment for herself that she can find out. Because when I say to her, look, this is your personal midline, and this is more the connection, it's easier when the head is above the pelvis and the pelvis below, and everything is easier, then she can't access this because she feels this is her middle. And so I came up with this idea to put her on the wall that she finds out by herself what she is doing. And I think this is more also what we do in the Feldenkrais method, that we help the people to feel themselves inside, but also in to the outside.
Well, the scan,
gravity
is about that. And I really encourage beginners, if you're doing a scan and you can't feel yourself, don't give up, keep going, because that's how we find it's like, oh, you're measuring distances, you're measuring, you're doing a stick image of where your arms and legs are. And that's a complete kinesthetic education that we're being brought to learn to feel ourselves as we are.
Yeah, and I've had the privilege, of course.
Yeah, go ahead.
I've had the privilege of reading people's questions and comments all week long. And one of the ones that has come up quite a bit is, I can't figure out what I'm supposed to be doing in this audio, and I want someone to tell me. And what Christina, and I totally respect your feeling of that, for sure. I'm not criticizing your feeling that you need help with that. But I want to point out what Christina has just said, that is really something that makes us stand apart, at least in the world of somatics, maybe not so much in the world of movement in general. I mean, in the world of movement in general, maybe not so much in somatics, but we want this self-discovery. And why do we want the self-discovery? Why is it? What's the big deal about discovering it yourself versus someone telling you what to do?
Terribly empowering.
Yeah, it's empowering. Yeah.
Terribly. I mean, it's learning.
It's learning. It's integrating. It's an actual integration.
It's mine. It's not what how the expert told me I should be, and I get to decide. So again, that word agency I've been thinking about lately because I have a 1.5-year-old and I'm watching him, manifest himself in the world.
Wonderful.
As
I'm
I
looking forward to this.
It feels powerful. It feels
But to come back to this, what is springing into my mind is not that, yes, we want that they discover it by themselves, but it is our like highly duty as a teacher to bring them in a situation where this special person can find it by themselves. So we are like artists in building an environment for the people. And of course, if there's an audio recording, it's not for only one person. It's not so easy to build this up. Also, I did this for my website. I have the little pieces from 15 to 10 minutes, and I sent this to 5 different people before, and someone said too fast, too slow, I didn't understand this, and the other person said, oh, completely clear. So it's not so easy with audio, and I recommend that you maybe try again, or you stop and that you go into it, because a video is very good to see, especially at the beginning. I can understand that you want to see what maybe is good to do, but that you, how we explained, it's okay to not to understand at the beginning, because we want that you have the possibility to find it by yourself, and that's it.
And I
So
think when you leave it to somebody to find it by themselves, what you find out is that even if you have an idea in mind for what you think you're leading them towards, they find what is uniquely needed for them in that moment. And they can totally surprise us and say, what I'm getting out of this is X, and you can go, wow, that's fantastic too. I mean, we all have, as Arlene was saying, all these parts. It's not just these external body parts that we see that have to come along for the ride. It's a lot of parts. It's like nanoparticles of parts that have to organize and come along for the ride. There is millions of things that happen, millions of things that happen.
I want to come back to something again. David will talk about it, but you said 90% of what goes on in the system is in the lower levels, below the cortex, the unconscious. And so Moshe is putting the work of our nervous system into action, exploring, feeling the difference between one way of doing it and another. This is part of the discovery, deciding for ourselves which feels more comfortable. And at the same time, through various tricks going on behind the scenes, the muscles reorganize, then the breathing gets free. And I want to just say something about how these things relate. My breathing is getting better, and therefore the messages coming up from the lower levels of the brain are saying, everything's fine. You're okay, you're fine, it's good. And then I'm discovering things, I'm feeling things, I like my quality of movement, and I'm good with myself in this moment. And the minute a teacher would come in and say, yes, but really, okay, but look, they can really do it better, But here I am in this very safe, comfortable, everything's feeling better, easier. The breath, the messages coming up, exploring, making discoveries. It's a very rich world, and to just reduce it down into, if you do this, yes, the vertebra will move and the ribs get a little free and it's a nice thing, but it's all the underbelly of the stuff that the teachers put in when they're teaching. And that Moshe was amazing in that way. Just what to say, when to say. He would give you something he knew, boom, that's the moment the diaphragm lets go, boom, do you feel in the breathing now? So it's an incredible richness that we experience in this world, where we're allowed to try and to discover, and not to do what we're conditioned to do, which is try to be right in 2 seconds flat. You know, Moshe used to say, the minute you've got it, the learning stops, right? Be the last one to do.
I also teach Ruthie Alon's Bones for Life work. And I remember one of my, and that's a work that is more modeled and has more of a specific kind of outcome that you're looking for. And I remember somebody who had come to my classes for a while, and then I hadn't seen her for a long time. And she came into one of the groups, and towards the end of the class, she asked, can I show you XYZ movement? And you tell me whether I'm doing it right or not. And I said, sure, you can show it to me. And she shows it to me. And I mean, it was fine. I mean, could it have been technically improved? Surely, I mean, it could be. But what I remember the potency of waiting a moment. And then I asked her, how do you feel about the movement? Do you like it? What is it like? She says, I love it. And I do it constantly because I love it so much. And I said, I think it's a fabulous movement for you. It looks like you're really enjoying it. It looks spot on for you. And then she said, and this, I'd never forgotten this. She said, no one in my entire life has ever told me I did anything right. And no one has ever complimented me on a movement because I've always been so awkward. And I thought, boy, what a moment I could have really screwed it up. I so easily could have screwed that up, because she did need some remodeling for a moment. She did need a little external encouragement, but I mostly tried to refer it back to herself and her own experience of it. And I didn't go into, well, if you did a little more with this or play with that, or then you could play more with this. I just left it the way it was. And that self-discovery is huge.
I remember Dennis, my dear friend, Dennis Leary, who's many people's dear friend.
Who was one of our leading Feldenkrais trainers. Yeah.
And he always said, people do the absolute best that they can, given their perception of their choices, of their options. Everybody, and Christina, we were talking about that too, when we met, about the positive, just the acceptance within the whole method of how people are and the choices they make. But at the same time, because of the work that we do with making a comparison between your habit and your option, we also create more options, and you can make better choices. But on the whole, we really believe everybody's doing absolutely the best they can, given how they see whatever the situation is. And the tricky thing about habits, and probably, David Hall will talk about it, but is that you can't feel your habit until it changes. And that was something that's another brilliant discovery of Moshe's, was he figured out all these conditions. In the beginning, the scan. Oh, why am I pressing so hard into the floor here? Or anyway, to show you the habit. And then again, the muscles reorganize, the breathing reorganize, the bones come into a different place. I move differently, the big muscles, all that. And I'm not in my habit. And then when I'm not in my habit, I say, oh, I used to do this all the time. And I didn't know because now I'm here. But they told me my shoulders were up, but I didn't know what they meant. But they go here, and then you go, oh, that's the contrast, right? Right. And that's what we're creating. Yeah. The discovery.
Yes, take the discovery.
You have lots of examples, aren't you?
I want to try to answer a couple questions, and then we'll see what else we can fill in. So okay. This is a question that references both David Zimach Burson and Irene Lyons interviews, in which they refer to the sympathetic and parasympathetic nervous systems. This comes from Taffy. By the way, Taffy, I really appreciate you being here in these live discussions. You've been asking some great questions. This one might be a little hard for us. I don't know. Let's find out.
Easy.
Can you not only differentiate the two nervous systems, sympathetic and parasympathetic is what I believe she's referring to, but what organs are affected?
Well, Moshe, I'm going to be controversial. Moshe would probably tell you to look that up in a book, but I can certainly talk about the sympathetic and parasympathetic in terms of the Feldenkrais method.
Yeah,
So-
well, let's define those for people first, because there are plenty of people listening and going, I don't even know what those are.
Right. So parasympathetic is what's called the rest and digest. And we influence that sometimes through work with the flexors, through folding kind of movements, and other different ways. There's lessons, space inside your mouth in relation to your diaphragm. I mean, we have a million ways of influencing it. Quieting down the noise of the brain, breathing, and the sympathetic is, I mean, there's a few different ways to think about the sympathetic in terms of, I think what Irene was talking about, it's fight or flight, is the high excitation extreme where like, this isn't going to work for me. I'm out of here, and where's the door? And I'm threatened, my survival's threatened, and, or freezing. So that's high activation, but it's also in a well-functioning sympathetic system. I'm ready to go. I'm ready to act. Certainly Moshe was as a martial artist. What's needed? I'm ready. And that's a lot. Extensors is influencing that. I can maybe talk about the muscular organization more than
Yeah, so let me say something, because Irene does a lot of work with organs, and also we're going to see in the somatics at large track, we're going to hear from Lisa Clark, who does body mind centering, and they do a lot of work with organs. Certainly visual therapists do a lot of work with organs. I'm not going to say we don't work with organs in the Feldenkrais method, because we know we're influencing everything, but it's not a primary focus. And if we wanted to understand what organ we were affecting, we would need to take additional training on that. So that was the answer of go look it up in a book, kind of. It's not really what we do. Some people do train in additional things, but it's not directly what most of us do in the Feldenkrais work. So we're probably not going to be able to answer that for you in an effective way, but there's no doubt we are affecting those organs. Absolutely no doubt about it. Also,
I think lessons where, I mean, if you create more of an inner volume, more inner space for yourself, like the work with the palate and the diaphragm, or we have some things with the lungs we work with. So, like Alexander, in a way I was reading it last night, but if you come into more length, and if you come into more width, and if you let go of all the parasitic contractions, which you're going to do in your fight to flight or your anxiety or, your fear states or your depression states, things are going to be squeezing in. And if you lengthen and you widen and the breathing gets better and the mind gets a little quieter, there's going to be more space for those organs to function. So I think rather than, making a one-to-one correspondence, it's like everything improves.
Right, and we're very interested in that overall improvement of the function and experience of life, and we tend not to get caught up in the actual mechanisms of what we think may have happened. So that can be a bit dissatisfying to some fields of study, but that is our general tendency, I would say. So I'm gonna go ahead, Christina.
Cynthia, and I think when we think about to work with organs, we have no awareness of them. So yes, as we say in Germany, if
that's what though, yeah, but there would be
that if though you would feel like when you drink too much, your liver will be crying, but you don't feel this. You only have headache, but actually your liver has. So it's awareness through movement, and we are good in adding awareness, and what does it, and it's more the second step that this affects the organs. And I would agree, if we want to do something special with this, then maybe like I with sleep, you can have a side way in Feldenkrais. And I know there are some people out, they are highly good, specialized in doing something with Feldenkrais and this too, but more the general Feldenkrais is more about awareness. And I can't move my lever because there is nothing, maybe I can, but it's...
Yeah, I think we don't want to
you know what I mean?
I think we don't, that is not where we've gone. I don't think we want to say you can't, that just isn't where we've gone.
Listen, what's important about sympathetic and parasympathetic, maybe we got a note about it, I don't know. But what's really important to realize is we're trying to create a better equilibrium between, and reversibility between excitation, action, high level of functioning, and calming down, sleeping, being intimate with friends, whatever it is. And there's a lot of disequilibrium, especially these people who have 60-hour work weeks and, you know, push themselves. So the method has movements which are, you know, flying through space, like I told you about in the beginning, and other ones where everything is just quieting, and we're trying to get the facility to move between, instead of people having a preference to, you know, like type A and B, we used to say. So somebody said something about the balance, the equilibrium, and I think that's what we're working on, is to have this huge range of response available to us in life.
Right.
And not just train ourselves to be a certain way, I think. Yeah?
Yes.
Safety.
Eleanor commented that some practitioners do focus on the integration of the organs with the lessons. I'm not denying that. I'm just saying that it's not typically a primary thing taught in the Feldenkrais method. There are definitely practitioners that specialize and develop their skill set along different paths, and there are people who do that. It just isn't real common in Feldenkrais trainings. So how does one take over? How does the parasympathetic or the sympathetic, how do they take over the other in certain cases? What happens? Is there a mechanism? Do we know anything about that?
How do we switch things over?
Yeah. What causes one to take over for the other one?
So,
pardon?
You'll see a lot of that in David's in the FI work, where, and David explains it very, very well. I hope everybody will watch that. But so in FI,
in functional integration, I don't try to use the abbreviations. Yeah.
Start by meeting someone where they are, and in some cases, you may even, for instance, again, I seem to be liking to hunch my shoulders today, but let's say my shoulders are forward and these muscles are contracting. And instead of saying, you know, you really need to stretch out your pectorales because that would, you say, okay, you like to be like this? You want to be like this? Fine, it's great. Let me help you. I'm going to lift your shoulders. I'm going to hold it. And then David said, the brain is no dope, but Moshe said, the nervous system is no dope. And it says, if somebody's going to do my work for me like that, I don't need to do it anymore. So then the shoulders let go, right? So you go with what the person's doing. This is one way, this strategy used in FI. You exaggerate what the person is doing so that the nervous system can have that impression. And you connect it in a pattern. And I mean, David's example is it's so clear what I'm saying now. You'll see, he explicates it step by step. So when you go with what I'm doing, it's like your person who you told was doing that movement really lovely. Something inside says, I'm okay. I'm not being corrected. I'm not being told I'm wrong. I'm really okay. And I can calm down. I can feel safe. And the practitioner, because he's organized like a very clever she martial arts jiu-jitsu person, is supporting you with such a good organization that you feel completely safe by the touch. So, and then you're ready to hear a new message. The neutral also starts shifting in that situation.
So, in relationship to the question that was asked, I think what Arlene just talked about is what we do is we start to differentiate between between sympathetic and parasympathetic. Now those words don't make any reason to the person. You begin to differentiate the experience of sympathetic and parasympathetic, rest and digest, and fight or flight. As we differentiate the experience for someone and we help them have a longer continuum available to them, then their own system begins to titrate and choose when is it time for rest and digest, when is it time for fight or flight, and they have the appropriate option available to them in the situation. When we've had a system that has been understimulated or we've actually withdrawn because of distress, so we stay in an overlax rest digest system all the time. This doesn't get talked about much, but people who work with children see this. These children don't know how to actually have something that looks a little bit more energetic and engaged and even go into fight or flight. They just kind of look, right? And you're trying to figure out how to help them get there. And then for those who would be more like me, which have a tendency to be kind of, you're trying to help me learn to go, there. That's another available option, something you don't always have to be going and doing. So
to sleep, right, Christina? To be able to go to sleep at night.
To be able to go to sleep.
Yes. Now I'm more in this to understand more what is the question at the moment. And
we're talking about sympathetic and parasympathetic balance. You have a range, but you know, Cynthia, I never just think of sympathetic as fight and flight.
It's not just fight. It's action,
right?
Yeah, that's the extreme
just being ready to participate in my life.
It's just like this is an extreme end, but we could also just be able to sit alert in meditation, and that could be a restful place that's also able to be ready for action if it needed to happen. So what we're really asking is, can you run when there's fire? Can you sleep at night? Can you make love to somebody and not be constantly thinking? Are you able to be with your children? You know, can we look at each other? Christina and I really look at each other and take each other in? Or do we always feel like we have to look away? I mean, those are the things we're talking about.
Fully in life and go on with your learning as well, and you can learn anything you want. That was actually a big part of Moshe's.
So he is talking a lot also in his books about it, that when you have the feeling to fall down, that you tighten your muscles, the flexors, to protect yourself. And if you have to do this all the time, then you stay with this contraction of your flexors. Then we have this again, why maybe the shoulders are so much forward. And it's not only supporting the shoulders that they want to go more forward, it's that it talks to the overall flexion, which comes maybe from being all the time so much in the sympathetic. But it's important to be in the sympathetic and to go from one to the other. But if you are frozen in one state such a long time, then you have a pattern of this and you stay there. And what we can do, we approach this through movement. And then I come back to the question before, why we want that the people explore it and don't only practice it. That it is so important that you feel everything what I'm doing at the moment is right. Maybe it's so you are not used to this situation that someone gives you such a lot space to explore and to fail, But this is the only way to come out of this pattern of doing something. And also when, for example, you do only a good movement, it's never secure if you're not taking care of yourself. So if you bring up the arm, and I can explain, you do it like this or like this. But if I add in this, feel to your shoulder. And if there's something uncomfortable for you, stop. Then it is so secure. You can't hurt yourself. And then maybe you can learn another pattern of movement that will not harm your shoulder. And also, isn't it nice that you explored, oh, this is the height, that's not good. I went up here, that's hurting. And then you have the possibility to play around. She said, I can go more here. Oh, that's good. I should, oh no, when I go, oh, yes. So, and then you find out the right angle for yourself, because my angle is not your angle. Yes. It's funny, I don't know. But I live in the north of Germany. I like men who looks like in the north. So never mind about dark hair and brown eyes, but I like this. So, and you maybe are more attracted to other. So, and then, but you find out, and I think you know what you want. But if you are, especially in all the movement trainings, we will be said what to do and what is right and which moment and when to breathe. But it's never secure if you are not adding the point, how do you feel with this? Where do you feel the movement? Because when you add this to everything, then it's good.
That reminds me.
I such a long, sorry, I'm talking a lot, but for example, I'm a piano teacher. I play such a long time the piano. I never had problems. Maybe also I did a lot of Feldenkrais. I had not so much time to play so much, but on the other hand, I came in contact so early with the Feldenkrais method that I never developed such strong problems like my colleagues, because I came in contact with the concept of, am I good with this? Oh no, it's hurting, and not, oh, I have to practice maybe different. No, I have to feel, and I have to stop and to rest and then come back to practice.
Huge.
So yes, so that was
it's and there's so much self-respect,
yes,
in learning to be the one that decides and the one that cares for oneself and the one that knows, what's.
Yes,
it's a lot of self-respect in that, and people try to get their self-respect too much depending on what others think, of course, but to feel, to know. And we have to teach people the difference between being comfortable and uncomfortable. They don't really know much of the time, right?
Mm-hmm. Mary Lee has a very practical question for us. I have neuropathy in my feet from chemotherapy, and I have trouble feeling the surfaces under my feet. Are there movements I can do to help this issue? I love this question. We can be so theoretical, and here we have someone who is not able to really feel the surfaces under her feet, and that means balance is precarious. Walking is not a great experience for her. So yeah, what can we offer her? I mean, I have ideas, but I'll let you two go.
You go.
Me go? Okay, I like working with this issue. So Mary Lee, one of the things that I like is actually from Bones for Life, Ruthie Alon's work, and we certainly do versions of this in the Feldenkrais work as well, but I like the simplicity of this, where you lie on your back and you put your feet on the wall and you have about a 90-degree angle between your feet and your thighs and your body. And then you begin to learn to walk your feet. Now you first might just be picking your feet up from the wall, but then you start having the image of standing on one leg and then standing on the other leg and then standing and then standing. And then you could put one foot on the ground. So I'm going to say this sequence for you because you could do it later when you hear the replay. 1 foot on the wall, 1 foot on the ground. Now this is really more like walking. And you begin again, you start with lifting, 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 but then you start to ask yourself, what if I want to stand on this leg? What if I want to stand on this leg? What if I want to stand on this foot? What would that be like? What would it be like for me to let this foot make better contact with the ground, with the wall? So even if you don't feel the foot well, you can learn to feel the transmission of the force through the bony structure. And that's what we're going to start to help you get in a Feldenkrais approach. And then you could back away from the wall and you could put your feet on the ground and you could do the same thing. And then you can come up to sitting and you can do the same thing. So this would be something that you could do on your own, as well as rolling your foot around on a ball. I like to put it on something soft and that gives, so like a half of a foam ball, because it gives. And so you can feel that when you press on it through the bones of your legs, that something changes in the bottom of your foot. That can be another easy thing you could do for yourself. Now, if you came to a practitioner, what might we do for that?
Go ahead, Cynthia, you're on a roll.
No, go for it.
Yes.
Go for it. Why don't you jump in?
Maybe I can suggest something more or deepen what you just brought as an example. Which it's so easy to like you walk, but not in an upright position. So what you are very secure when you're lying on your back and the feet on the wall and you are tapping. It's for the nervous system, it's mainly the same like walking. And the good thing in it is that you're lying on the floor and your ribs are on the floor. So you will feel how this tapping is not only in your feet, it will also maybe wake up your feet. Why? Because when you are upright on your feet, you are so more sympathetic because you are unstable. But then your feet can start again to feel, oh, that's the surface. And learn maybe, is there a little bit what you can feel and you can discover this. But on the other hand, what is more important is that this area has no lack of reception of anything. And if you can give you the possibility to experience while walking, lying on the back, how your ribs are moving, you can learn to feel yourself in walking and your ribs are helping you. Yes, maybe it's too much Feldenkraisian thinking in different...
don't tell yourself about neuropathy, just forget it.
But
the person, don't train your brain to think about this problem. Just try these things and give we say give the input from the bottom up. There's also artificial floor, probably Cynthia was thinking of, where we take
artificial floor, any kind of sensation that will increase your skeletal awareness.
Bottom up from it, instead of the brain saying, I've got neuropathy.
Right. So, it's very difficult though, if you lack sensation in something, as somebody who had a couple years with this, not neuropathy of this kind, but where I had sensation, it's very difficult not to obsess about it. But if you you need to give your system new things to sense and to feel and to get curious about. And so that's what we can be really, really good at, is giving you some new things to sense. Any of these lessons that you've been doing with Tarot, the videos, I mean, really Marlene is too, but those might be a little bit too difficult for where you're at right now. But Tarot's can turn around and start to make a difference, because as Christina is saying, as your rib cage and your pelvis realizes their job, what'll happen is you're able to bring and load weight on a leg in a way that it doesn't rely on the foot's ability to sense itself on the ground. Everybody else is doing their job, and the foot becomes a little less important in terms of its sensory capacity. So it can happen that you could really get some great improvements, even if we don't technically improve your sensation in your foot, which we may, but we may not, but we can
Yeah.
help you improve your balance.
So, Cynthia,
I think what clears up what happens is that you know maybe that when a person is blind, these person can hear much better or more differentiated. So now you have such a situation that your feet are blind, but you have the rest who can hear better and can be better in hearing. And so that you shift to another part of yourself which can be or must to be better now. And the Feldenkrais method is such a good method to help you to find these other places which can help you to hear better, to feel better, how you can be stable and standing even when you can't feel so much your feet or like before, so that you can cope with this situation. So maybe I wanted to add this very explicit example.
Yeah.
You may know.
So I'm going to ask another
yeah, you use all the other parts. Somebody just said, I saw vision, vestibular, but it's like Moshe with his knees. I mean, it's not quite, but I mean, the birth of the method. Happy birthday again, Moshe. Difficulty of not knowing if he could bear weight through his knees. And if you watch him walk, I mean, he knew exactly every part that was going over this leg. And then so it was part of how he put the whole thing together. He had to know. But anyway, probably need another question. That's a lot of suggestions.
Yes, this is another practical question. My neurons are not working with my central nervous system. I have been diagnosed with SMA. What are my best movements? And she has a friend who's a practitioner, so she does have somebody she could work with. You know, this is a difficult question because when we talk about best movements for something more global like this, it gets a little bit more difficult, right? To come up with, I mean, I was able to have a set of recommendations for somebody with neuropathy in their feet because that's a much more specific area. It's something that I can identify, having worked with a number of people, how it tends to manifest. This gets a little bit more difficult in my opinion.
What is Anna Maria? Sorry,
I don't
what's
know
SMA?
actually. I know it's a neurological disorder, but that's what I know about it. So she might be able to say
need to see the person, and I'd come up with a lot of good ideas, don't you, Christina? I mean, that's the
thing. I have to see them. It's what. So I think let's talk about that. What if she came in to us? He or she came into us, and they said, "I have SMA." And my nervous system and my neurons are not working. Let's talk about practically what
spinal muscular atrophy. Spinal.
What would we do? What would we do? Okay,
now that I know what it is, so I would say, you know, God, Moshe, I was just thinking this morning, Moshe worked with this person, I don't know if Eleanor was, anyway, who had muscular dystrophy. He never got out of a wheelchair, and he was the most evolved human being I've ever met in my life. Moshe gave him lessons since childhood. So we would do something to make you, on the highest level, we would give you a lesson that maybe would feel like walking, that would make you feel like you were walking, whether the muscles were behaving perfectly or not, or we would go into some neurological connections that are still intact, or we would, help through the skeleton for you to feel. We'll use every single thing that's available to help you approximate, in a way, this feeling of wholeness and ability in yourself. That's a very broad answer. And then the specifics, I remember, and yeah, Cynthia, you look like you have some sentences.
Well, I think we would want to see how is movement for you right now. And so we would be very interested in actually watching you as you're talking, moving, coming in. Are you in a wheelchair? Are you doing some assisted walking? Are you maybe walking pretty well at this point? We're going to want to see your function and your expression of yourself. And we would want to know what you want to be doing that you aren't able to do or that you want to do. These things are really important to us, is like, what is it you want to do in your life? And we would tend to then focus our lessons towards something that you want to experience, that you want to be able to do. And so we don't want to take that for granted. You might say you want to be able to roll over easier in bed. You might say you want to be able to get up and down from the toilet on your own. You might say, I want to be able to speak and talk differently. So these are characteristics actually that go with this in every functional integration lesson, or should go with us in every functional integration lesson in which we work with someone one-to-one.
The tongue.
The tongue, great.
Because the tongue, there's some awareness through movement lessons we have. You could do them in your imagination, but where you take your tail back a little and you stick your tongue out in different situations. So even if you can't move your tail, if you can move your tongue, you can think about that. And that helps to the extent possible, maybe wake up the primitive level of the extensors. So when you say the neurons aren't working, we don't know really, because it could be not working here, but somewhere else you can fish it out. So that's one thing I just remembered about the tongue, and the extensors.
I love that. That's a great idea. So you could talk to the practitioner of yours that's a friend and look for even tongue related lessons, or you could look online. You might be able to find that some of us have already put some online lessons out there around the tongue. I've learned so many things today, especially impressed by the theory of repeating the movement on the side that works better or more often. He was releasing, so he must be referring to David Zimach-Berson's lesson. He was releasing the right side by continuously working on the left. Is this a usual method for practitioners? And I'm wondering if this can be applied to other areas like business strategies, etc.
Oh, it's so judo. I've been looking at that biography. Don't they have that in business? Some martial arts strategies.
They have Six Sigma. They call it Six Sigma as a whole process to train in business, but I don't.
He was talking about throwing somebody by going with what they're already doing instead of against. Well, yeah, because when he's going with, he's also taking over the muscles that are contracting. So when he lets go, she comes into more of a neutral where she can go new places. So it's really tricky. You're going with, but by going with, something shifting. And also, as David went on and on about, she feels good about herself. Yeah, you're great at doing this. Don't worry about your problem. You're such a pro at this shortening thing here. So.
And also, maybe you saw that he touched I think she was lying on the left side on one point, and he was coming up from above to press the right ribs. But what will happen to the left side of the ribs on the floor? They will come to the, not to the floor, to the table. And also, if she wants to or not, they will move and there will pop up something new and information in her mind. But she thinks, oh, he is on my right side and I feel this and I feel. Still, we are there with the parasympathetic and you know what I mean? And that she feels secure and is not alert and tends to tense and to protect herself because he is on the side which she thinks, oh, it's okay. But he is working with the left side. So I use this strategy often. I think a lot of the other side, but I'm touching the other side, the good side.
Right. Yeah, sure. It's the whole self is being affected, everything we do. And
yes.
That's the thing about awareness through movement is so amazing. If we have any beginners here, is that, you say, okay, now, move the arm and fine. And then you say, now, as you move your arm, shift the pelvis to the right. This is what David does in the functional integration lesson or whatever. And now lift this side from the floor, whatever it is. And they're like, if you tell me my right arm, I think it's my right arm. But what? Oh, you want me to pay attention to my left side of myself? I mean, we're not trained like that, are we? I move the front. Oh, you want me to feel what the back part is? So we're getting this global awareness of ourselves. And David is bringing it because he touches almost every part.
Mm-hmm.
He touches almost every place, you know, touches her foot or ribs or spine. But again, feeling the whole self.
So the SPY,
Also,
I'm not sure what your actual name is, SPY, but I want to address the part of it about business strategy. So when I started taking my Feldenkrais training, I was still managing within a healthcare situation. So I was managing a several $1 million billing department with employees. I have to tell you that my management style with my team changed dramatically as a result of the Feldenkrais method. And I started to really ask myself a lot of different kinds of questions. I mean, this idea that nobody was trying to do a bad job, it translated for me in a different way of thinking about my teams and my people. This idea of recognizing what people already do well really started to translate. And I think I still ask myself those kinds of questions. What is it that we at Future Life Now already do well? And you know, to capitalize on what we do well and not to obsess as much about what we don't do well at. And you can organize, you can either try to fill in those gaps, or you can start to learn to organize and capitalize on what you already do well. There's also I think a huge amount of respect for people that starts to transfer into the workplace, and playfulness. I started to use a lot of games and playfulness within the workplace, trying to match that to the particular teams that I was working with, what would be their interests in how they would play with things and learn to take risks. So I think there's a lot that you can transfer. Our theory in the Feldenkrais work, Dr. Moshe Feldenkrais' theory was that his work was not about movement, but a way of exploring through curiosity and experimentation, and then seeing what the results were. And that ability to do that, I think, totally translates into business as well. So thanks for asking that. We believe that the Feldenkrais work can work in just about any field if you want to take it there. And we see that, right? We see practitioners specializing in all kinds of different ways. So let's take this one from Taffy again. She says, so she wants to go back to this organ thing, and I think now I understand why she wants to. So, well, adrenals, heart, eyes, lungs are stimulated during sympathetic response. Absolutely. I understand your body responds to stress and we need to calm it down as not to damage organs. Okay, that's true. And what organs come into play with the parasympathetic response? Well, I got to tell you, I think all organs come into some play with the parasympathetic response. These are very deep protective mechanisms. There are certainly some that are more than others. But here's what I think we can really talk about for you, Taffy, is it is just fascinating to me that the Feldenkrais method delves into the nervous system and the brain. And I have an instinct that a method that involves and improves our eyes is a real need, at least for me. Now, this is great. Let's talk about this a little bit, because we do quite a lot with
my student in my Toronto training, David Weber, did a whole program about eyes. I mean, the eyes are, the first thing is the eyes. This is one of Moshe's discoveries that I think Alexander did not. But anyway, that the eyes, the way we use our eyes creates the muscle tone in the body, the resting length, or how the muscles work. So is she a practitioner or is she from the public? This question, or we
I believe she's from the public, but I don't know that.
Okay.
I believe she's from the public, and I think she's been studying other works that really deal with trauma and difficulty and from other things. And I think I'm piecing this together from all her questions to the series.
I mean, I've certainly met a lot of people who had very unsafe childhoods, and I worked with a little orphan boy once, and I don't know if Anna Maria is here, but in Italy, the first thing he did when he came in was to make sure he knew where the stair was, where the exit was, how to get out. So, and there is a kind of, and I don't like to generalize. I hate that kind of thing, but there can be like a too much checking of the environment, and then the eyes are always looking around, always trying to see, and the tone is too high. So anything where we can learn to, have less, to have, I mean, do the eyes really need to work that hard? Could you feel you could look around, see the world, make sure everything was fine without all that extra parasitic work going on? And I mean, Irene would say probably you don't start with an eye lesson. I mean, in terms of what she presented for a person that's feeling those things, but we learn by that we can have some say in these things, and we can move the eyes softly, and there's very simple things. Maybe they're in the ATM where you don't start. I'm going to teach an eye lesson this week. I love them. I think they're amazing. But you start and it's just the eyes and the hand. So it's not just.
I love those lessons.
And you look around, and the eyes help you reach further, and the breathing is free. And so it's a piece of something, but it's improving, and everything around it is improving. So I think again and again, this principle, which I dreamt about, it's so important, is Moshe said, if you have a problem, you have a problem for life. And I went crazy when he said this, because I said, no, if you have a problem, you have a problem. Why is he saying it? But the way to deal with any difficulty is to start bringing in more and more and more other parts of yourself. So if the eyes are the difficulty, work with the eyes, but work with the movement, work with the hands, work with the space, whatever, work with your feet. There's amazing connections between the eyes and the feet. So whatever it is, you build up a bigger picture. And within that detail will be brought up.
So we just had a couple hints there, didn't we, Christina, for the gal that was saying that she had trouble, the person was having trouble with even the neuropathy in the feet, right? So this gets us a little bit back to how we are globally working with something. We kind of go in and then we come out, and then we go in and then we come out.
It's such an optimistic method, as the clock.
Yes, that's it. Yes,
an optimistic method. Yes,
an optimistic, that we think you can learn and you can cope with a different situation. So it's not nice to have a very severe illness, yes, but you still have some other resources, but you need to find them. And still, I say again, Feldenkrais offers you to find them, because you don't have to be like, I think you have to do it, because we want to find out how you can do it. And I can't know this because your situation is so far away from my situation. But what I can do as a practitioner, I can build up an environment where you can explore. And then you will find something what fits with your type of nervous system, or where you are at the moment in your state of tension and thinking. When you open your mind of going the way with the Feldenkrais practitioner in more exploring, and not so much like fulfilling of something.
right.
Yeah.
So for the person with SMA that was talking earlier, really, if you think about what movements are available to you right now, and then you look for lessons that allow you to explore in a range that's available to you right now. And then you think about what's available to you in your imagination. So maybe a lesson you go, oh, that lesson wants me to do this. I don't really know how to do that anymore, but you remember how you used to do it, and you could start to do some of it in your imagination. We know you'll get some improvement. So we are really an optimistic method that regardless of the diagnosis or the injury or the trauma that has happened in our lives, there is a pathway to improvement. And even if a person is paralyzed and mostly can just move their eyes and their mouth, there's a pathway to improvement. And it's an improvement that that person will recognize, and they'll feel that optimism, right? Now you might say, they didn't stand up, Cynthia.
But
I was thinking they were going to stand up today. And you know, what they did is they breathe easier. They are able to feel softer in the mouth, swallowing is easier, breath is easier, the eyes are easier. I'm telling you, that's big. And they feel more optimistic about life because life is better than it was the moment before.
The number of people that have come for lessons and afterward they say, oh, I feel hope, right? I feel some hope. And because all these biological changes that have gone on in the layers and yeah. Anyway, I was just thinking, do I get to say that I have, anyway, I have a little video of a little boy on my website. It's only 10 minutes. If everybody watch it and see it's possible for somebody who
so
can't.
let's start to wrap up with that. Christina, you've got a giveaway for us.
Oh, so I just want to say we didn't talk much about imagination. If we are more in the essential Feldenkrais method track, and maybe this will open up. Yes, we can talk half an hour more.
Yeah, we can't talk a half an hour more. So, but yes, imagination.
Okay, about my giveaway. So
yeah.
if you
imagination is an important part of the Feldenkrais method. It's huge.
Imagination. Now you go to my website and please do it, because there is only in German at the moment. I have a little paper about some lessons to may help you with better sleep and some recommendations. And there you will find also the concept of the day who is sowohl als auch, who is now German. It's like the day who has both inside, action and stillness, that feeds your sleep. You need to move, but you also need to rest during the day. And there are little hints in this paper about how to deal with this. And also I have 3 recordings of lessons. And they are, I think, especially good for people who are new in the Feldenkrais method. So
and those are also in German?
They are also in German.
Oh,
but
really?
you can,
hey,
but
it's fine. It's fine. There are plenty of people watching in German. So you will see that below the video on the page, you'll see Christina's giveaway, and then you'll also see Arlene's Own's website, and you can go out and watch the video that she's suggesting there.
You need, I was away busy when we were supposed to do the giveaway. If you need me to give you something,
no, honey, it's too late for that, darling.
And I'll see what I can find.
It's too late for that.
Contact me.
There's a whole process for making that happen, but you go follow Arlene on her website, and you can make connections with her if you like.
Yeah. I want to say, sentence. If you subscribe to my newsletter in English, even though in German, I will have new stuff for you in the summertime in English and in German.
And you do want to follow her podcast, which is in multiple languages.
Yes,
so I totally recommend that. I want to tell you about the bonus day now. The morning of the bonus day, which is going to be May 12th, in the morning, it is for everybody. And we're going to have a full-length awareness through movement lesson at 8 a.m. with Lavinia Plonka called Rejuvenating the Face. Hey, did we talk about that a little bit some here? We surely did. And I think that you'll feel improvement in your eyes. You're going to feel improvement in the mouth, the tongue. Arlene made the connection to the feet, to the tail when you work with the face. So totally tune in for that. Then Lavinia is also going to do a session for us on fun in the Feldenkrais method. So totally a great morning for everybody. Starting at noon, we're going to have sessions with other practitioners. We've got Larry Goldfarb. I can see my notes are not complete, so now I'm going to have to do this from memory. Larry Goldfarb at noon is going to be doing accessing the method using timing, orientation, and manipulation. That could be interesting to everybody, for sure. Definitely interesting to practitioners, physical therapists, occupational therapists, yoga teachers. After that, at 3 o'clock, will be David Zimak-Burson. He's going to be breaking open differentiation as the root of positive clinical outcomes. I think that is going to be a winner for you all who are working with people. You will be amazed, I believe. And then at 6 o'clock in the evening, these times, by the way, are all Eastern Daylight Time. You can put New York into your time zone converter. 6 o'clock, Carol Montgomery will be talking about the power of language to drive successful clinical outcomes. So all three of these are based in principles of the Feldenkrais method, and we want to see if we can help you out in your other professions to draw on principles that we use in the Feldenkrais method a little bit more clearly to affect your own positive outcomes, or enjoy your practice, have your clients enjoy, your patients enjoy your practice more, all of those lovely things. We actually have many more questions, but I know this is the point where everybody starts to fatigue. So I tried to pick out the ones that I thought would be really different and would go maybe with this track to give people more things to go with. And thank you all so much. I really appreciate having you here. Appreciate the audience who's been attentive with us. I appreciate you, Christina, for coming on with us and your leadership in the podcast. And Arlene, I appreciate you. And I told you before, I still remember my functional integration lessons with you. And as I was listening to you talk and you were saying, you're okay, I thought, I got to go out and have sessions with her again and just have her tell me that.
Everything's fine.
Everything's fine. I mean, Arlene, I might be there tomorrow. I need that room work, honey, that you do.
It's such a happy thing to bring to people. Thank you again, Moshe. I mean, it's so positive, and the number of people, I mean, I think I've managed to not help 4% of the people that have come to me over the last 35, 40 years. So that's pretty good, I think, don't you? It's a great method. So, and please, if you've never taken a full-length lesson, please give it a try.
Yes, absolutely, if you can. And definitely, you can at least come to the Awareness Through Movement lesson on our bonus day and have a full Awareness Through Movement lesson. And if you have the chance to have a functional integration lesson or series with someone, it is a transformative experience. At least it was for me, and I see it is for many, many people. And again, I thank you all. I hope to see you back tomorrow night.
We have to thank you before we go, though. I know we have to go now. What an amazing thing you have done. Oh my God. It just shows you that if you do the Feldenkrais method, you can accomplish limitless things in life.
Well, I'm just going to tell you that that is my business background. So I'm not going to say the Feldenkrais method has nothing to do with it. I hope that the Feldenkrais method has something to do with my resilience throughout this and my ability to handle a lot of different situations and people. And also, I have to tell you, one thing it's helped me with is, you know, every time you're on an interview like this, and tonight there's probably 3 or 4 things I've said that I already wished I didn't say. You have to let it go and move on. And that is not who I used to be. I used to be somebody who obsessed about that. And I do think that the Feldenkrais work has helped with that. And, you know, there's definitely a lot that the Feldenkrais method has given me to be able to do this job with some level of grace and ease, even though it's actually a very difficult job. So, yeah.
Your breathing probably stayed much freer than when you were a business person.
Oh, there's no doubt about that.
You know, you can go into a really difficult situation and your breathing's free. So that's a big deal.
No, and I've mostly slept through all of it without tremendous difficulty, where, you know, I would not have been able to do that in those days. So, you know, there's definitely things that has gotten for me. I also want to thank the people in this track, all 3 of them, Diana Razumny, David Demock-Burson, and Irene Lyon for presenting her ideas about what she hopes for the Feldenkrais method. We appreciate all three of them. Thank you all.
Thank you, Cynthia. Bye,
Thank you.
Christina.
Bye.
Ciao.